So welcome everybody for the town board meeting, May 8th. Do we all stand for the invocation? And Martha?
Heavenly Father, we welcome your spirit in this place tonight. We ask that you give your wisdom, knowledge, and discernment to this board and all our members, and those in this room as decisions are made affecting the town of Princetown. We pray that your will be done and not self-will. We pray your unity and peace prevail over division and discord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please remain standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to open up the meeting at 7:06. And Sandy, could you please read the roll?
Councilman Savoldi?
You know, pass it by you all the time, right?
Schaefer, here.
Yeah.
Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Councilman Mora? Here. Supervisor Esposito?
Present. Please make a note that also present is Nick Moore, Senior, our Highway Superintendent, and our Attorney, Gerard Parisi. Okay. Privileges of the floor. At every scheduled town board meeting, the public shall have the right to address the town board during the portion of the meeting referred to as privileges of the floor. Members of the public should restrict their comments to items of town business. Although there is no official time constraint, speakers should be considerate of others so that all interested members of the public have an opportunity to be heard. There should be one portion of the meeting dedicated to privileges of the floor near the beginning of each meeting. All remarks and questions shall be addressed to the board. No person shall enter into discussion with the person having the floor. Council members may address any comments during the course of the meeting referred to as council members' comments. Privilege of the floor is open now at 7:08. Do you have any takers? I see we have our solar people here. Is there anything you'd like to say, or?
We do want to have a little bit of a, this is the first we found out that you are about your resolution that is on page 3 at the top of the
Could
page.
you stand and state?
Sure.
your name?
My name is Bob Rosenthal. I'm from Greenberg Traurig. I'm here today with Tycos Energy, and we were just learning today about what is on top of page 3 as a proposed resolution. So we would like to understand a little bit more about the resolution. And then we'll probably have some comments after an understanding of what the resolution is about.
Comments are at the beginning of the meeting, so we can be at the end of the meeting.
Excuse me?
The comments are at the beginning of the meeting, not the end of the meeting, so is there any?
Sure. I mean, just looking at it for the first time, I have an understanding of what the provision of the general municipal law requires. I just am we're trying to understand what the purpose of the proposed, what would the time period be for the proposed moratorium? What are the specifics around
Well,
what the language would
hearing
be?
next month on it, and then it would be a 6-month moratorium. Gives the town board an opportunity to review the law and to understand everything that we want to see about it and discuss it with our attorney and the town board. We're not going to be rushed into this. This is too important for our town. We've got a very rural community here, and there's a lot of people that are really not, I should say, for it at this time, other than some of the residents on the road that it is going to encompass. And I'm sure that after looking through this prepared statement here that you put together and that people signed, I don't know if they actually read this before they actually signed it, but I certainly am going to go up and talk to the residents up there and explain the project to them to see if they understand what it's gonna encompass. And I'm certainly gonna ask some members of our town board to go up at different times to talk with the residents up there. There's one in here that the comprehensive plan included town roads, which show the alternative energy system, solar panels, 87% support. When this comprehensive plan was put together, there was no such things as so-called solar farms. This was solar for homes, this wasn't even mentioned in New York State, and it wasn't until the governor started pushing this solar farms, as they're called, that this came about. And before the town is going to enter into something like this, you also have the opportunity, you know, if it's over, I think it's 25 megawatts, you can just go to the state and override this, you know, as other towns have done, or other municipalities have learned. But this one is under, and you're not going to be doing this, starting the work until, I think it's December or November of 2019. That certainly gives you certainly enough time to put this forward if the town board agrees to a solar law. So I don't understand what the push is for it right now. That's just my opinion, and I don't know what the rest of the town board thinks, but that's just my opinion of it. And I do have some questions for you now that we're at it, and I don't know who can answer these questions, but I'll ask it right now. The power that's generated from this thing, this is going back into the grid. Am I
Correct.
listening? How do you make your money off of it? So much it makes, so much it produces, is how much it makes. What happens to the extra energy?
There is no extra. It is purchased as it's pushed into the grid.
It's purchased as it's put into the grid.
It's metered.
Well, what would be the problem with the town being a part of that?
And since the town is part of it, because it gets the royalty off of that.
What's the royalty?
Well,
Just what would be negotiated pursuant to a host community agreement.
Well,
And-
Jim, do you have a comment on that, a host agreement?
Actually, I've been making some attempts to get a hold of the comptroller's office, because, so that they could explain to us how we would handle that exactly. In fact, we've been going back and forth with, playing phone tag with the New York State Comptroller's office. And my concern is, I just want to make sure that the flow of funds from the project to the town, et cetera, and so forth, all meet the requirements of the Comptroller's office. I don't want to run into accounting and financial error problems after the project is started. Unfortunately, getting a hold of these folks is not easy. They have attorneys, they have accountants, they have everybody on staff, but it's just not easy to communicate. I call them, they call me, we're going back and forth. Finally, I talked to the secretary and submitted my email. She couldn't give me his, and hopefully he'll email me and we'll be able, that's a lot more streamlined process. But that is a concern, because we have to make sure as a town board that any monies that flow in, any revenues that flow in, are appropriate and approved through the New York State Comptroller's office. I mean, that's our responsibility. So we have to determine all these things ahead of time.
And I'm just wondering, I've seen it done in the county, that the energy flows back to the municipality. We're looking to become a zero energy as far as payments due for our town. And we're in the process of, the town board approved it. I think you were here at the last meeting. We're going to convert all of our lighting over to LED lighting, including the street lighting, to reduce our energy costs. So we're looking to have some of this power, if it was granted, and we did come up with a law, brought back into our town, so we can have a zero cost if the town board wanted to go forward with a solar law, which I don't know if they do or not. I haven't discussed it with them. That's all I did, was ask if they wanted to do interested in a moratorium so that we could look at this and see if this is something that we really want to do in our town.
In answering one of your earlier statements, or in identifying the project schedule and the timing, and the 2019, the Q4, or December 2019 as the proposed online date. Now, any development...
I think that was the start date, if I read it in there correctly. I thought it was a start date.
Well, so the...
Start of construction, or start?
Oh, no, start of construction would be less than a year from now. Because, I mean, to build a project of this size, that's a whole nother part of the education process of, of what we provided the last time we were here. Would be another part of what that is, there's environmental studies, there's interconnection studies, which we're already involved in. There's the permit process, months involved in that. And then with the financing timeline. So, we're looking at that schedule in our approval process to move forward.
Well, I received your email on, you talked to Metroplex about this. What was the purpose of Metroplex being involved in this?
We have to talk to Metroplex for the purposes of just dealing with the pilot issue. We have no choice but to do that. So we met with Metroplex just to discuss, the county tax issue, how we would deal with county taxes in the same way that we're dealing with you, with the host community agreement.
This county tax issue, this is, since we don't have a town tax.
Right, but the county and the school district are, it's taxable property for those purposes. And so we have to address those issues with it through the county. And that's what we're doing.
So what is the benefit to our town to do this? I know you talked about a host agreement, which we don't know if we can do. And I just mentioned that there is why we can't receive this energy back to the town.
You can.
Because ours is certainly not producing anything out here. I mean, it's supposed to produce so much, and I don't know, what is it, a 20 megawatt system that you're putting in?
So first, on the host community agreement, I can provide you with a 2007 article that was written by professors at Albany Law School. It's all about host community agreements. It's about the authorization for them, how they're used in New York, and the legality of
Well,
them.
do you have any host communities in New York?
Yes, there are. I can give you plenty of host community agreements in New York for renewable projects.
Well, in the last meeting, you said that there was no host agreements in New York.
There are numerous host agreements.
Well, that's not what we were told at the last meeting.
The last meeting, I recall saying that you could Google them. There are many, you could literally Google host community agreement. There are several for wind energy. The one that I can remember off the top of my head is Town of Sydney, but there are several in New York.
I asked that question, and I distinctly remember you saying we would be the first. Is that not what I heard?
I honestly don't remember. Does seem like he said something about Google, and I actually called a number of communities, local communities, Caheri. There are a lot of them that are in the process, but unfortunately most of them are involved in pilots. There are very few situations like ours, which is very unique, where we need a host community agreement. And so that's why I called the controller's office, because I thought the controller might be able to clarify some things for me. If you have data that we can review and look at, that would be wonderful.
Right.
I'd love to look at it.
Yeah.
But my concern is I want to make sure that everything clears the controller, because once funds start flowing, everything has to be appropriate. And I'm not doubting that you guys know what you're doing, but that's our responsibility on this end. And so that's one of the reasons we just haven't been able to garner that information yet.
Right. And, in our conversation with the county, just so you know, they did say to us, do you want to address the town through our agreement, or do you want to deal with them directly? And we said, we're agnostic on that. Just so you know, they offered that to us as dealing with it through their pilot, dealing, to provide that payment to you.
And then funds would come to us through them.
Correct, through
So
them.
that's the part that we don't have
Right, and
clarity on at this
Right.
point, and we need that. because-
Right, yes, that's absolutely understandable. With respect to the other issues that you raised, being provided with energy directly, fixing your solar arrays that are outside, those are things that, believe it or not, I think we would be happy to discuss with you in the context of our host community agreement. Those are the types of things that towns discuss with developers, and we're happy to have that discussion with you. These guys have a lot of technical expertise. We've already tried to figure out what is the problem with them. And we're happy to look into that for you, and that could be a requirement of the host community agreement. So,
My
just
personal opinion is this out here supposedly saved the town of Princetown $500, five or six.
600 about a year or so.
5 to 6.
For that out there, the way it looks, I don't like it. For $600, I'm sorry, it doesn't
My
doesn't
concern
show
also-
me where it's making any money for the town of Princetown.
My concern also is when this money dries up from the state, and like I said at the last meeting, eventually it's gonna dry up. What happens then? I know you talked about a bond, you're not paying the bond up front. You guys could go broke. Solar companies at Solar, what was it, City out there in California, look what that cost the federal government. You guys could go broke, and the next thing we know, as all of these solar projects, they're gonna end up with solar junkyards lined all across upstate New York.
So, it's a complex issue, but there are renewable portfolio standards all over the country. New York is one of the states that has them. I think there's 26 or 27 states that have them, and we're one of them. It's not, New York doesn't actually fund them, they're actually funded by the utilities of New York. So that's how it's done. It's done pursuant to a law. That law would have to change. Somebody would have to come in here and change that law. So it's actually funded through the utilities. They fund all of NYSERDA's programs. It's not funded through the state budget. It's funded by the utilities themselves. That's how it's funded.
And what you said at the last time you were here, that you're gonna build the thing, okay? Then you're gonna go to banks or wherever to get the money to fund it after you build it. What if you don't get that?
We won't build it.
No,
If you don't get the project financing. So say if you wanted to build a house, you had a nice piece of property, want to build a house. And you go to the banks to get the construction loan and then later the mortgage. They're gonna wanna say, well, do you have the wherewithal to handle that mortgage? And that's what happens with these projects. It's the same thing. You go to the banks to finance them. And they like the long-term ownership because unlike a natural gas plant, unlike other forms of generation, solar is relatively simple. It's basically Legos. If you look at natural gas prices over 30 years, just like oil prices, they go up and down. And solar comes in and you know what you're producing 20, 30 years out. And that's why it's being adopted all over the country in a large way. And referring to some of the companies that you mentioned, there's a difference between a technology. Some of the companies that have not done well have been technology where they're building the panels and have new technology. In this case, it's a project financing. If we were building a building, we're the steel company that's making the girders. We're building the building. And that's what we're doing, is we're basically.
Where do you get your panels from? China?
They come
Japan?
from all over. They can come from China, they can come from,
How come you don't have them from the United States?
because we don't frankly produce many. It's under just a fraction of a percent that come from the US. I would be the first to say, I wish we did. We invented the technology back through NASA in the 1970s. We didn't follow up on it. I hate to say it, but that's the nature of it. It's just like our phones, our computers. It would be great if this stuff was manufactured. Actually, we are currently working on a project for a company that wants to bring manufacturing back here in another part of the country.
So let me just clarify something, so just to be clear. So NYSERDA provides part of the funding, the rest is pursuant to a power purchase agreement, it's through financing, just to be clear about that. Another really large benefit of these projects is it allows, the landowner to get a lease and to be able to, productively use his land so that he can maintain that land. Right now, for example, this particular landowner, I don't think is able to actually use that land for farming purposes. So, we're working with the landowner. It's actually the landowner that went door to door. We did not go door to door to get those signatures. We're working with the landowner. I think the landowner is eager for this project to move forward because he would like to be able to get a productive use of his property, and he sees this as a productive use of his property. So there is a real benefit to the actual landowner also, and I don't think we should disregard that.
Well, I understand all that, but the town, municipality doesn't base creating a law on one or two people in the town or three people in the town that want to use their land for something different. We have to look at the whole town in general, and if we create a law, it's gonna be for the entire town. That's why we're looking at a moratorium, a public hearing next month, and a moratorium to figure out exactly what we want to do. Maybe we're going to do a survey with the residents in the town to see if they're really want to go with something like this. Maybe that's the avenue we're going to pursue. But at this point, pushing us into creating a law, and I think you took the law from Duanesburg, which has got nothing to do with us, but according to what I read here, you took the law from Duanesburg. We already allow solar on the roofs. We didn't need you to put that in there. And we do allow ground mounts for homeowners. I don't think this is an unreasonable request from the town to place a moratorium so that we can look forward, move forward and study this a little bit better and see if the residents in our community really want to go forward with solar farms. That's my opinion, and I don't know what the rest of the board feels, but we just may do that and ask the residents if they're looking for solar farms in our community. And like I said, if we create a solar law, we're gonna have to do it for the entire town. It's not just gonna be for Florida Road or whatever. There's another couple projects that have approached the town too. It's just not you. And we're getting opposition from the neighbors from them. But they're not interested. And everybody says, oh, solar's a great thing, but nobody wants it in their backyard.
That happens with a lot of types of developments, unfortunately, in my experience. So one issue with timing, I think that's important, and just to put a point on it, is any developer has a lot of balls that they have in the air at the same time. So one that they have right now is the interconnection. They have to go through the New York Independent System Operator because they're interconnecting into the state grid. And that's a process they have to go through with down payments, and it's costly, and it's timely, and they can literally kick them out of the queue, and they're done. And so they can address that issue more specifically for you. But that's a kind of critical issue for them that puts a timing constraint on us that I think you should be aware of.
One of the things that I was going to mention is, I understand, we don't want big solar farms, people coming in and just buying up farms and selling, putting up solar panels. But what about special use permits? Could we make an adjustment for just one?
I think he can address that. We had talked
That's what I'm saying, because they did that with Mr. Paul right here on Pangburn for his business. And he had special use permits for a long time.
Yeah, I don't think under the zoning code, special use permit is allowed. I think technically you probably apply for a use variance, but but I think with the four prongs, you know, anything can happen, but I think it's a difficult road to hoe for you to get use variance. I think that's why you're here pushing for a solar law, because if you're gonna do it, that's really the best way to go.
Right, and you know, and just to be clear, I did work on it, that the provision that we sent to you, the ordinance, the draft that we sent to you, I worked off of specifically what I saw, what you guys had already done. I used Dwaynesburg as a guide. I did not include anything on the rooftop from it. It was for all floor, you know, ground-based solar, 2 megawatts and greater.
That was a 100-acre minimum, correct? If I
City-
remember from that draft had a 100-acre minimum.
It had a 100-acre minimum. We put in a lot of, we heard you last month. And so we addressed a lot of your concerns. We provided you with an email with bullets to show you all how we addressed all those concerns and modifying what Dwaynesburg did to make it kind of even harder to build solar in this town, to be frank with you. We also added, we heard your issues on decommissioning. We saw that you had added additional conditions on your decommissioning, and we added those to the ordinance as well. So it's actually much more stringent than what Dwaynesburg has created. Yes, I did use it as a guide, it was there already, but it looked to me as if you guys had used it also, just based on my review.
So there were a number of other issues that popped up, and I don't want to belabor the point, but one of them was, when you have these large acreages with the solar, the vegetation control, is that done chemically, is that done, you know, is there gonna be an impact on wells of neighbors nearby? Question, we came to the planning board, had a meeting last month, and many of us came here just to sit in on that. And a lot of these questions popped up. And there were so many questions that at the end of the planning board, this is what they recommended, was that we buy a little more time. I mean, I personally, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I can see the benefit of it, but we do need time. There's a lot of little things that we have to clarify, because we're responsible for that. You know, we can't, in other words, do you use chemicals to control the vegetation?
Right, and so I'll tell you that the one on Long Island that I worked on specifically is not allowed to use any chemicals on it,
How do you
period.
maintain that, the growth?
Sheep really work well.
So is that built into?
It's one of many solutions. You can seed it with a low-growing grass. There's a number of solutions
The
without
north end
using
of town, where this is
herbicides.
gonna be, those folks up there are operating on wells. Most of us down here, look at the south end, we're running off the aquifer. So, but, you know, that is a concern. I mean, if there was
It's a
chemicals.
valid
Right,
concern.
and
That large an area.
right, and so this would be subject to your special permit requirements. All of those issues would be dealt with like in any other development that you have in the town. If it was determined that there could be, you know, for environmental reasons, there shouldn't be any pesticide used on that land, the planning board could, you know, require that as a condition. I think we would volunteer that as a condition.
Yeah, absolutely. It's no problem.
I personally don't think that this is unreasonable to put a moratorium on this to do a larger in-depth study of what the solar law is going to entail. And I don't know how the rest of the board is, I'm just not going to vote yes on creating a law right now without further study and asking the residents in the town if this is what they really want. We're not dictators here, and we want to do what's right for the town, and that's what we were elected to do, is to do what's right for the town. And if the town is really interested in having solar farms throughout the town, then we should consider it. But at this point, I can't see it unless we do an in-depth study of it. And we've got plenty of time. I don't understand what the time element is here at this point.
We can explain the time, he can explain the timing, because there's a lot of different elements of it, and we could be kicked out, they could lose enough money, have to make a decision on money that they have to voluntarily just stop the project. But it's understandable that you want to learn more. We hear your concerns. It's not debatable. I would just request, I think 6 months is a long time, and I think that it's an issue that we can deal with in a shorter time period, and I would hope that you could deal with it in a shorter time period.
I think that the supervisor, one of his concerns, his thought is, I think we had a couple of panels put up at one of our pump stations, is that right, George? And the people complained about how it ruined the area, the looks of the area. I think that's what Lou was sort of insinuating.
Church Road.
Huh?
Different Church Road.
Gifford Church Road. They wanted the trees put up and everything after the panels were put up. So this is what I think, he's worried about complaints coming in from the people. So I think that's what your main thought is, ain't it, Lou?
That's one
That's
of them.
one of them, yeah, so I don't know.
To the timeline, we already have, at this point, because you have to do the interconnection, and as you go through the interconnection, they have to study, what's the impact? If I push 20 megawatts into the grid here, and by the way, we've had the first phase, we've already put over $300,000 up. Part of that gets reimbursed eventually, but we put that money in to look at what the impact of putting that money, that electrons into the grid at that point. And actually, it's very good. This is a good spot to put power in because it helps stabilize your transmission grid locally. It's like a booster pump at the end of a long irrigation system. It brings up the pressure and balances the system. So actually, it is providing a benefit locally to your power. But more specifically, go into the timeline, we have, because the New York ISO has specific timelines and NYSERDA, that you need to hit these goals. Once you've been awarded, they don't say, well, come back in a year or two. They have very specific guidelines. And we have a business decision that comes up in August. We have $2.5 million of engineering that needs to be done. Now, that's a tough decision. Because you go, if you don't have a permit, anybody want to put down $2.5 million? And that's just a business decision we have to make. And that happens in August.
Just sort of, you guys are probably clear already, this is clear, we're not enacting a moratorium tonight, it was clear
Right.
for the public.
Yeah,
hearing.
yeah.
So whether it ends up being 6 months is, I think, up for discussion in the public
Right.
hearing.
I mean, maybe use a different word for moratorium.
It's not uncommon, by the way. I spoke to supervisors and mayors all week. I called all over New York. And it's not unusual for them to have a moratorium in the beginning phase of this. A lot of them did do exactly that. And most of them did not regret doing it. I mean, just so you know, it's not uncommon. It's not just the town of Princetown.
Anything else for us?
I would love to get some information from you,
Yep.
so that I could start reviewing that now. And I could give you my email, and maybe you could
Okay.
send me, you can send me digital copies of everything, that's fine. PDFs are fine. You don't have to print anything out or mail anything.
Send it to me too.
Very good.
And I think that the one other thing I just wanted to mention is I hear the concern of having multiple large solar farms spread out throughout town. And I think that's one thing we discussed at the last meeting is through very, different technical, environmental constraints that are required for solar. Solar, there's very few places that this will work, and that was some of the language that Bob tried to provide is through minimum acreage, through a minimum or maximum distance to existing overhead transmission line, no new overhead transmission line. We could certainly add in things like pesticide, no use of pesticides, that it would limit and make sure that these are sited responsibly in the town, and that you wouldn't end up with that amount every.
Because that was some of the input we got at the
Sure,
meeting. Is
absolutely.
People are saying, well, we don't want to have the whole town turn into, solar farms all over. We have a lot of large properties in this town.
And that was the one of the main reasons.
qualifications that they're requiring either. We don't have towns, because you're requiring, they have 400 acres at least, right? And then they were using 100 acres of them?
No, the minimum acreage, I believe, was 100 in the draft.
That was what we put in, yeah. So
That
that's
could be
something we could
adjusted.
work on, yeah. And the intent was to draft some restrictive language, not to, you know, say that it's
And
that
there's
number or
engineering
nothing else.
restrictions as to where that,
Exactly.
those electrons can enter into the grid
Absolutely.
itself. Some places are impossible to do
Right.
that.
Impossible for voltage size, and then in addition, you know, if you can, have to be 100 acres and have to be less than a half mile from,
So there's sets and subsets that narrow it down to very
exactly,
few locations.
exactly.
No, you go ahead.
Are you suggesting that solar use be a permitted use in certain zoning classifications, or just throughout the whole town subject to these?
It's, you know, I mean, we certainly would like to see it in this particular zoning classification.
Which is what for your project?
I think it's R2, it's residential,
Your
or I'm not sure exactly.
There's two.
Maybe it's agricultural.
Yeah, there's two
Okay.
zonings that it falls in, EM, EF, and
MF
MF.
5.
Yeah.
Third number.
So are your thoughts to apply, if this went through, just to those zoning classifications, or to apply it to the whole town, or it doesn't matter to you?
I mean, as long as we can build it there, it doesn't matter to us, but it would be a way for you to limit it.
Okay,
It would be another way for you to limit it.
okay.
How does nothing concerning us, but how does the landowner get paid? Do you have to produce so much before he gets paid, before they're paid?
At least by acre. So
So you don't have to produce a certain amount?
it's the land use, so it's not dependent on what it generates.
So no different than leasing the land out for grazing or, you know, somebody else to grow corn, standard agricultural use.
I'd like to say a couple things, like maybe something. First of all, the word moratorium kind of scares me because there's a moratorium against mining in Princetown. Sitting on millions of dollars worth of limestone I can't use. You know, the moratorium to me seems like just the start of the end of everything. I don't know, I guess you could put time limits on it. A lot of this stuff is over my head. The issue of pesticides. The wells will be way better in that area with the solar than they are with the way the farmers use pesticides. A lot of times farmers are careless, there's a lot of stuff going around. There's been no well problems there, but I mean, it'd be, they were talking about doing low grass, which doesn't have to have any maintenance. They're not gonna be killing ground to till it. They're not gonna be causing erosion by plowing it. It's gonna be maintained better. The ditches, all the water management coming off my mountain will be way better than it is now. Would be a plus for the whole area. The pesticide issue, all that, and, you know, my family's been farming on that land since 1970. The milk market's drying up. The farmers are going out of business, and I'm trying to do something with my land. I was hoping that somebody can help me here, so.
Okay, is there anybody else? Ben, you got anything to say? Any other questions? Okay, is there any other public comments?
I would just like to say that it's good to hear from someone that would be on the receiving end of these things, from a different perspective. And it helped me to hear how the landowner might feel. So I just want you to feel that to know that your comments were very welcome to a lot of us here.
Thank you. I did personally talk to all my neighbors, and they're very excited about this project. Even the ones that are gonna be looking out of their houses down at it. They're okay with it, they're excited with it. It's the way of the future. People didn't like cell phone towers when they came out, now everybody wants more cell phone towers. So you can have reception.
I'll take exception to that, it's the beginning of the end. It's certainly not the beginning of the end. I just think that the town should be looking long and hard at this, because if we're gonna create a law, we have to do it for the entire town. And we have to discuss it with our attorneys about how we could allow it in certain areas and not in others. We certainly don't want it into residential areas. And this law that you just handed us over here, I mean, it's, you know. That's why we're proposing the moratorium, so that we can do an in-depth study of what, if we're going to allow it, what we actually want to allow it. Doesn't have to be a 6-month moratorium, it could be less. We can discuss that with the town board, but I think a public hearing is nothing that anybody should be afraid of. We've had moratoriums before on projects in this town, so that we could look into it further. One of them was the McLean's distribution center that they wanted to build over here on Route 7. That was, we placed a moratorium on that until we did an in-depth study on how it was going to impact the residents of the community with truck traffic but I just don't think that having a public hearing on it and getting input from the residents is something that we should be afraid of. I don't know, how does everybody feel about that?
Let's see what they want.
Exactly.
Well, it is a major issue. I mean, a small town like this, it's not a bad idea to have folks come in for the public hearing, have their say, bring your folks. I would recommend that you bring yourself and your folks and all these folks here, bring them in. I mean, we're happy to listen to them. That's encouraging to listen to them. And if the consensus is after the public hearing that, you know, this is what we want to do, then we do it. It's not, we're not saying we're not going to do it, in other words. We're saying we need time, and there are certain questions that we have to answer. It's our responsibility to the town to answer those questions.
You know, many residents throughout this community have received letters from solar companies asking for the use of their land. I don't have a lot of land, 32 acres, my wife and I have. We got a letter, Doug got a letter, he's got 40-some acres, he got a letter. Anybody that has any kind of acreage in the town has received these same letters. You heard it the last time, one of our residents, the lifelong resident of the town, he actually signed the papers and then they backed out. The company backed out. So, you know, it's, like I say, we're gonna create a law, we're gonna do something, we're gonna have to do it and make it for the entire town, or I don't know how we could limit it. That would certainly gonna be up to our attorney to.
Well, we limit it through the engineering, through the acreage requirements. There's ways to limit it using, you know, we just keep making the sets and subsets so that the intersections are very narrow. There may be 2 or 3 spots in the entire town that would meet those particular requirements, because, you know, we're not gonna say this is just one big circle. It's circles and vectors into vectors, so that it winds up being a small piece that's possible in the end.
And in reality, that's what it works out, because it's just pure economics is what voltage you can connect. You gotta build transformers to boost that power, and there isn't line capacity and all the various constraints. In terms of, we don't run our business that way, in terms of sending out mass mailers. We deal with people directly, and I think in that package you saw that we have recommendations from other counties that we worked in going back 15 years. And those are good and solid relationships, where the counties were very appreciative of the projects we did do.
Well, I told you my concerns about it. My other concerns about it have been just what we dealt with over here 4 months or 5 months into to this lease or this solar that we have in the town hall. They filed bankruptcy. It went on for 1 month. We didn't even know that the inverter wasn't even working. Nobody even told us. It was bought and sold 2 different times now. And like I say, these solar companies, you know the reputation with them. They're here today and gone tomorrow. And maybe you're not like that, but we don't know you from, you're from Washington State. We don't know you from, you know? So that's our concern too. And like I said, I know that the governor's been pushing this solar, and I think in years to come, you're gonna see solar junkyards all over the state where they are. And I don't know how they're gonna be decommissioned, and how do you dispose of these panels? That's another question. Because they start losing their efficiency from day one. What do you do with them after?
And when they start losing they do, but they do it at a very slow amount. They burn in, what you call burn in, and then over a 35, 40-year period, they will slowly degrade, like anything will degrade. Any real electronics will degrade.
Sure, they get a film.
But that's why these projects can get financed as far out as 35 years. And it's not, and who's financing these? JP Morgan, Prudential. Why do they, in the letter, for example, in our reference, we mentioned Ulico. It's one of the largest union pension funds in the country. And they like these because they need to provide the income to their members over 30 years, just like insurance. And they like these investments because they are so reliable. It is not natural gas. It's not other forms of
You didn't
generation.
answer my question. What do you do with them after?
Oh, and so you just,
Recycle the parts.
yeah, you
I
just
mean,
tear them apart. Glass,
Glass, aluminum, steel in the racking structures. They're more valuable in the repurposing and recycling than they are just, sitting there. So as junk, they're not, it's an ownership aspect in that decommissioning. I mean, I've signed with landowners who want the first option on the equipment, in the scenarios that you're talking about. So, sure, I'd like to have that opportunity to recycle it and get and cash that in. So, there's a lot of money just in there in materials and commodity.
So no hazardous substances. There's no hazardous substances, no toxic substances
Yeah.
associated with the facility.
All right, is there any other questions? Doug, you're on the planning board, you got any questions?
I'm good. I just come in, so I don't know where everybody is.
Ben?
So, I certainly understand as a landowner wanting to make money off your land, especially since farming can be challenging. But, the board has the responsibility to the whole town, so I think the idea of taking some time to survey everybody is probably the wisest choice, in the whole. And to take some time with it, make sure that we do have full town support before we move forward with something that's a 30-year commitment. Like you've mentioned before, I question where the technology is going to go over the next 30 years. What they produce on 150 acres now might be 10 acres in 10 years. The technology is changing pretty quickly, so I think the best bet's to take the time, put the moratorium in place for a little bit, and, hash out all of these details before we move forward. And I do feel for the landowner, I get that. I would love to make money off of my land, but at the same time, the board has the responsibility to the whole community and not just, individual landowners. So, that's it.
Thank you, Ben. Any others?
I concur, I think the town needs to take a moment, go over an issue that's gonna affect everybody in town, and see where everybody is, see where, if the townspeople as a whole embrace it and want it. If they do want it, then we should put it through. If the town as a whole and its people oppose it, then it's a townspeople decision It's not the town board's decision, it's the townspeople. And we should leave it to, to them to decide if they want to, one, start using up some of the agricultural lands in the town for a temporary purpose, because the lands have been here long, and it'll be long after the panels are long gone. So, we had the meetings, where we had the ZRC meetings. We are now going to address it in the comprehensive review meetings again to see if come up with another proposal for the town board, and however you go about choosing to implement it through, surveys and or referendums, or to figure out how the townspeople want to, react or vote on it. I think the townspeople should decide whether they want it or not. And, that's what all the boards got together 2 weeks ago. And we all talked about it. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Doug. All right, is there any others? Doesn't have to be on this subject. Okay, I guess we'll close the public hearing up at 7:55.
Yeah.
Okay, committee reports. Highway, Nick.
Yeah, well, we had a problem again with the gazebo, trucks went through there and messed up all the lawn. Louis and myself, come up with other ideas. We went and picked up 2 concrete things and put up, to block them off again. We're gonna try that, maybe we got it solved now, I don't know. And also, the fences that we're gonna put up, Louis come up with a suggestion to put them up near the gazebo instead of down on the end, which I thought was a good idea. I don't know, everybody else will think about it, but if the trucks do come in and they can't get through, they'll be backing up into our fence to get out. And they'll be damaging our fences. So the fences are gonna be after the entrance to the town hall, right there. And we'll have that plus the barricades around the gazebo. That's about it on that issue. And then, we went and looked at road work, and we gotta get prices from Empire for doing 2 roads and fixing the cul-de-sac. I think they were gonna do the were they gonna get the price
Oh,
on
I
it?
forgot to tell you, Nick, that on Rennick's Corners, they did fix that lady's cul-de-sac.
Oh, they
She
did
called
that?
me and she
Okay,
wanted to
okay.
thank you and me for coming up there and doing it. They did it yesterday.
Okay, the county's been pretty good with us, and in fact, they've been real good. In fact, this morning I called them for Doug Thorpe, getting Reynolds Road straightened out, it's a mess. They went up to the power lines with the road and they quit. So if they can take it from the power lines on down now, so they are gonna let us know, but they are gonna fix in front of your driveway, Doug. I got that going. And so what else is going on? We went someplace else, didn't we?
Well, we looked at other cul-de-sacs.
Yeah. So the main issue is how much it's gonna cost us to get the road work done. And if we got any money left to do anything else with that culvert pipe that's giving us a problem on Kelly Station Road. We measured it and it is ours. The county don't wanna take the expense of doing it, so we gotta do that ourselves. So hopefully it'll last for another year, I think. So we looked it over and I don't know, Lou had a big discussion with one of the homeowners, and I guess he got a big apology later, which was good.
Doug brought up a point. He thinks it's larger than 25 feet.
County road is 60 foot,
Well, the road is, but from center of the line over,
30 foot.
it's 30? Okay, I measured 25, so it's right on top of the culvert then,
You
so.
gotta call the county and tell you, but I know you have a town law right now that's 60 foot right away for a road.
Yeah.
That's the town law. County's gotta be 60 foot
Well,
or more.
if the road is 30 foot, you got 15 on each side, more or less.
From the center line
Yeah,
of the
but-
road, you should be 30 foot.
But that doesn't count on that, it's a county line road, it's a county road, and I don't even think, it's not 60 foot right away there.
I guarantee you this, I'll bet you.
Well, who's gonna get in touch with, who are you gonna call?
I call Jolene.
Okay, we're gonna
You
see.
got 30, you got 60, you gotta have 60 foot for a road.
Right, I
It's
know
30
that.
foot from the center line of the
Or
road.
we won't accept it, correct. Well, that's
And the
fine.
county roads is the same thing, the state roads is wider.
So that's a
I
couple.
told Louis that the other day.
Okay, so 30 foot from the center line.
I
comes
can
right
take
to
you
the
right in
road.
front of my house, I can show you where the concrete barricades are for Penguin Road, right on the corner of my father's property, and I can show you across the street where Nora lives, right there. There's 2 posts right there, I guarantee it's over 60 foot.
Well, if it's 30 feet, and that is their culvert.
Right.
You measured 25, it's just to the end of it, so it's 30 feet, it is there. We'll just check on it and see, and what
I'm telling
Nick
you,
was
county
on.
right of way's gotta be 60 foot. The town right of way is 60 foot. And if you wanna build a driveway, you gotta have 100 foot, that's stupid.
Well, what Nick was talking about, what happened over here at the gazebo, we've gotten trucks that are still coming in, turning around, they're gonna end up running over the gazebo again. The barricades we put up, they went right around it, and you can see that they damaged the lawn next to the pole. Nick got 2 more barricades from Grandview, and we put them in, and his son and I were up here, and we put them in, and we did get the trucks. We looked at the video. One was a truck from Montreal. We called them, we're gonna file a claim with them, and we also had one that was delivering 3 tractors, and we got him. State police helped us track them down. We contacted I think Sandy sent the pictures to both.
I did, I didn't receive any response from either one of them, but I did
But
send
we're
them.
gonna file a claim, see who's gonna pay for that. We just can't have this anymore, they're gonna end up taking the gazebo down again. Signs are all up, signs say under 24-hour video surveillance. Apparently, either they can't read or they don't wanna read it, and they're just going around it. It clearly states 4-ton, no trucks, I mean, and I don't know what they're thinking, just coming in and going fast around it doesn't mean we're not gonna get the video of it. Like the one did, right, Sandy? Went around there as fast as he could over there. It was like a blur, but we still got the truck number and the name of the outfit, so. But we're talking with them, and that's what he's.
So the cameras are working beautiful, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, they're working. Thanks, Sandy, for figuring out how to work it too, to retrieve the information.
You gotta slow it down.
Okay. Moving along here, water, George?
Fairly quiet month, nothing really going on. Storms the other night, just dropped a tree across Quackenbush Road, landed on top of a hydrant. Luckily, it was still hung up in the stump, and the branches were on Quackenbush holding it up, so it laid perfectly on top of the hydrant. Wes Plessy ended up with a backhoe and his chainsaws and everything and cut it off. The county was busy elsewhere, I guess. The end of next month, we'll be doing water meter readings, getting those bills out there first part of July. And outside of that, everything's going on fine.
Any questions for George? I forgot to ask, was there any questions for Nick? No? Well, thank you, Nick, for your report. Any questions for George?
I did see that tree though, that page.
Yeah. Took down all the power lines and everything else.
Okay, well, thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
And Sandy, do you have the report from the?
Tom?
Yes. our building inspector, total permits 5, permit issue 5, permit fees collected $1,510, inspections 4, code zoning violations inspection 1, fire inspections 1, final building inspection 0, certificates of occupancy compliance 1, bank deposits none, check to supervisor's account none, checkbook balance as of May 8, 2018, $1,997.29. And working on complaints he's got, activities and zoning. This is from Tom Barini. I think, did everybody get a copy of this? No, we can get everybody a copy.
Yeah, I didn't think I saw it.
Save the paper.
That was from Tom Barini, our building inspector. If there's any questions for him, I can call him, he's in the other room. Okay. And our,
Yeah, it's been quiet. No missing dogs, no complaints about dogs, and we had the Ag and Markets inspection with Judith. Everything's fine there. So onward till the next month, see what happens.
Cindy had pointed out to me is, has people been doing their dog licenses?
No, I've seen dogs that I know are not licensed. I don't know exactly how you take care of that except visit their house and ask them.
And we had a big thing in the newsletter about it too, you know,
That-
trying to encourage people to.
That brought a few people in, definitely.
I mean, this is just not a town law, this is a state law. I mean, you know, we're just enforcing the state law with this too. You know, it's not something we want to do.
It's,
It's just something that has to be done.
you could look on the list for those that haven't paid yet. You know, I mean, they're probably all different times according to when they get a dog. We could call them up. You know, a lot of people they'll respond to that. There's always gonna be a few that aren't. You know, they're gonna wait until something happens and then deal with it when it happens, so. But we've done that in the past.
Sandy,
Could continue on it.
list of, thank you.
You give me a list?
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll look into that, and it's something that'll take a little bit at a time, and go down there, call some people up.
Okay. Thank you. Any
Okay.
questions for him? Thank you.
It's been good. No other complaints.
No report from the judge. As usual. Assessor, we don't have a report. Buildings and grounds, I just discussed over here with the problem we got with the gazebo, which we're gonna eventually straighten this out. We sent out the lawnmower to be serviced. We're gonna be looking at the state police building to repave the back of the building. We get a price on that from Empire. They're under the county project now, so doing the roads, we will be exempt from the 3-bid rule because it's under the county contract like it was last year, am I correct?
That's correct.
Yes. So, and whatever else has gotta be done at the state police building. They've been kinda quiet. They haven't been asking for too much at all, other than that their driveway and parking lot is becoming very, very bad. So, we're gonna have to look at least getting half of it done this year. Other than that, waiting for the grant for the county to come through with the LED lighting. They told me not to go ahead and order the lighting. We got the grant from National Grid, excuse me. National Grid. That's coming, but that's been approved. And we're gonna be converting all the lights over except for these in here, we can just change the bulbs in here. But all the street lighting and the parking lot lighting and all the lights inside the town hall is gonna be converted over to LED lighting. We should save half on our energy bill. But I'm told to wait. That's coming, it should have been approved, but they're waiting for the final paperwork to come through from the state. The county got a large grant for, to convert over to LED lighting, so. And we're the first one to apply. I'm just waiting for that now, and I was told not to place the order until we get it approved so that we don't lose out on it. So that's what we're waiting for on that. And we've got 6 months, I think, National Grid, before they, the project we'd have to apply again for it. So, other than that, I think.
The only other thing is that the judge was having computer problems. Apparently, he needed his laptop hardwired, and I was able to do that fairly inexpensively. We bought some equipment down here to Office Max and hooked them up. I haven't heard any complaints. Is he okay apparently? He's
Yeah.
must be working all right. I haven't heard any complaints.
Since there's no do that. I don't know who's that. That is on the look, you must know already.
Oh, yes, I did get this.
You got it already?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Okay, public hearings. Are there any other questions for me? Okay, moving along, public hearings, we've got none. Minute meetings is hereby resolved that the meeting minutes of April 10th, 2018, regular town board meeting are approved or as amended. Is there any discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Sandy?
Councilman Bowles?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schaefer? Yes. Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Councilman Creighton?
Yes.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. Call for public hearing. Be it resolved that a public hearing be called on June 12, 2018 for the purpose of considering public comment on a proposed moratorium on solar farm use in the town of Princetown. Be it also resolved that the town clerk is directed to publish the required notice for the public hearing. Be it also resolved that the proposed zoning moratorium be referred to the Schenectady County Planning Agency in accordance with GML Section 239/M. Is there any discussion on it?
I just have a question. You're asking in this for a consideration for the public comment on the proposed moratorium, or moratorium? Thank you, moratorium. So you're just asking if the people want to have a moratorium?
Well, you have to
or
have a public hearing on it, and then
You have to have a public hearing for them to say they think we should have
Well,
a
they
moratorium? Because is this saying that we're putting a moratorium in?
No, we're not, this is not
No,
saying
no.
that we're putting.
This is just for really a public
This is for
hearing?
the-
Calling for the public hearing.
Okay.
And you won't vote on it at the next meeting
Right.
either, because the 239M referral, they have 30 days, and it's not, the next meeting in 30 days, it's not gonna go out tonight, so.
Well, my concern mainly is because of their August deadline. Because, I mean, they've been here, what, has it been 2-3 months that you've already come and presented? And so that's what I'm saying, it's already in. I'm just wondering how much more time, if they've got a deadline.
How hard is that August deadline?
It's hard. It's a, yeah,
End of August, beginning of August?
beginning of August.
I mean, I have no problem, I understand that, I think it'd be in the, for the whole town, that we do have a public meeting, and if you brought all the people that sign, you get most people to come that's interested in it. I'm just kind of concerned about the timeline for a moratorium. Because they have a deadline, that's why. I mean, when you presented it earlier, you were saying that the project wasn't gonna start until next year, so I thought, all right, well, that's not gonna, hurt it at all by giving it a 6-month moratorium, but I'm afraid that might be a problem. But if this is just for the public hearing, I have no problem. because I think it is important to have a public hearing.
Any other discussion? Doug? Nicole?
No.
Jim? Well, is there a motion?
I'll make it.
Or a second?
I'll second.
Sandy?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yeah.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. Correction to resolution number 18-87, speed limit recommendation and referral. And we put the wrong road down, my fault. It is hereby resolved that the town board of the town of Princetown hereby recommends that the speed limit on New York Route 7 from the intersection of Kelly Station Road, CR number 105, to the border of the town of Rotterdam be reduced from 55 miles an hour to 40 miles per hour, and that such recommendation is hereby referred to the county of Schenectady for its review and consideration. Like I said, we had the wrong road on there, and the county gave it back to me. It's gotta go to the county approves it, and then gives their recommendation to the state, and then the state would decide whether they wanna lower the speed limit or not, because it's a state road. And the way the state moves, probably be a year before, even if the county recommends it, but, I'm sure they will not have a problem recommending that. Is there any discussion?
No, why is that the wrong road? I looked at the right road and it's right here.
We called
Kelly
it,
Station?
we called it Waynesburg Road, and they said we had to call it
Oh.
New York State Route 7, so we
Oh,
had to
okay.
change that wording.
But it's the right area, that's the right area we want, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wasn't exactly
No.
Now, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Sandy?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yeah.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. Sandy, can you have that written up so I can bring it down to the county? Thank you. Be it resolved, let's see, PAC Chair, be it resolved that Carl Larder is appointed as PAC Chair at an annual stipend of $200 for a term to expire 12/31/2018, reappointment for not signing the oath book.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Sandy?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. General funds claims, is hereby resolved that the town board approves claims number 76/number 97 in the amount of $25,940.53. Is there any discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Sandy?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. Water funds claims, and hereby resolved the town board approves claims number 37/number 43 in the amount of $5,411.74. Any discussion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Sandy?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. Highway funds claims, and hereby resolved that the town board approves claims number 2 in the amount of $1,600 for salt and sand on Overlook Drive. Discussion?
Make the motion.
Second?
I will.
Sandy?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. Highway transfer, it is hereby resolved the town board approves the transfer of $1,600 from account number 99019 to account number 5031 for salt and sand on Overlook Drive. Discussion? Your motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Sandy?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. Council members' comments, discussion. Doug? Nicole?
I'm good.
Sue?
I just want to mention about the summer youth program again. I'll have all the applications and the information put up on the town's website. They are looking for volunteers still, and counselors. I think they're short 2 counselors. So if anybody knows, anybody interested, it's about I think it's 5 weeks, and it's like 9 to 12 for counselors and volunteers. Counselors do get paid, but the information will be put on the website. That's all I have.
Thank you. Jim?
Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, right here, we're gonna have the opioid overdose training. The state will be providing the training. They will also be providing opioid overdose kits with Narcan. You'll get 2 doses of Narcan. You'll learn how to use them in the event of an overdose emergency. Friend, family, anyone. It's a good thing to have. It's a fantastic thing to know. It's affecting everybody throughout and every socioeconomic class. It really is shocking what an epidemic it is, and it's very handy to know about that and to have the medication on hand. I know my wife and I keep the kits in our cars. There's one out in the lobby that we keep, but I would encourage everybody to come if they can.
I do have a question about that. I received the postcard for Santa Barbara. It said you had to register. Does everyone have to register?
No,
Are they
no.
going to have enough, they'll bring enough
Yeah,
if people
They
didn't
should be
register?
able- yeah.
Because I have people asking.
You should be able to come.
Anything else, Jim?
That's it. No, I do hope to see some folks here tomorrow night, though. It's free, and it really could save a life. We've got, there's stories that I don't even want to repeat, but there's horrendous stories about lives that could have been saved had they had that simple kit on hand, and you'll get that kit tomorrow night.
And we have some for the town hall too.
Yes,
Is that it?
that's it for me.
I'd like to know what the board's feeling is about putting a missing in action prisoner of war flag below our American flag. Do you have any objection to that? No. So, you want me to go ahead and purchase them? Get them from the same dealer that we buy our American flags from?
I have the one that we flew over the wall.
So we only need one.
Got one. Tom can have it. I mean, part of the wall, so
Appreciate that.
I'll dig it out.
So we're good with that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. That's all I really had. Nothing else from anybody else? We're all good?
Yes.
Okay, it's hereby resolved that the town board meeting is adjourned at 8:25. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Councilman Pavaldi?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schaefer? Yes. Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yeah.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. I'd like to thank everybody for attending. And I hope to see you at the next meeting.